Picture the excitement in your house on December the 8th, 1981. Just 17 days till Christmas, and you're standing at your front window watching the first proper snowflakes of the season drift down past the street lamp. Your breath fogs the glass as you press your face close, and behind you the coal fire crackles in the grate, the wireless playing Christmas songs already. The smell of mince pies baking drifts from the kitchen, where your mum's getting an early start on the festive preparations. Just another ordinary winter evening in Britain, the kind you'd had every year before. This wasn't just another cold snap. This was the Great Freeze of December 1981, when Britain's dream of a white Christmas turned into a nightmare that would grip the nation for weeks, transform ordinary journeys into life-threatening ordeals, and remind everyone that nature still held the power to bring modern life grinding to a halt. If you lived through it, you know. You know the sound of ice forming on the inside of bedroom windows. You know what it felt like when the excitement of those first snowflakes turned to dread, as the temperatures kept dropping and wouldn't stop. You know the fear in your mum's voice when your dad didn't come home from work at his usual time, because the roads had become impassable. December 1981 started mild enough. The weather had been typical for early winter, a bit of rain, temperatures hovering around 5 to 7 degrees. Nothing remarkable. Shops were gearing up for Christmas, their windows dressed with tinsel and fairy lights. Woolworths had their toy displays out, and the high street was busy with early Christmas shoppers picking up presents, wrapping paper, and all the bits you needed for the big day. Children were writing letters to Father Christmas, circling toys in the Argos catalogue with felt-tip pens, counting down the days. Then, around the 8th of December, the first cold front moved in from Scandinavia. The Met Office mentioned it on the forecast, said temperatures would drop, said there might be some snow, especially in Scotland and the north. But this was Britain. We got cold snaps every winter, a bit of frost, maybe some snow that would melt by lunchtime. Nothing to worry about. Most folk carried on with their Christmas preparations as normal, putting up decorations, buying their turkeys, making their lists. But this time, the cold didn't ease. It settled in like an unwelcome guest who'd come for tea and decided to stay for a month. By December the 10th, temperatures across Britain had plummeted to -10 in some areas, -15 in others. This wasn't the gentle frost that made everything look pretty on Christmas cards. This was brutal, bone-deep cold that hurt your face when you stepped outside, that made your eyes water and your lungs ache with each breath. The kind of cold that made you question whether you really needed to go to the shops or if you could make do with what you had in the cupboard. The snow started properly on the 11th, not the light dustings people had expected, but heavy, persistent snowfall that built up inch by inch, hour by hour. By the morning of December the 12th, large parts of Britain woke to find several inches on the ground, and it wasn't stopping. Schools in the north started closing, bus services were being cancelled. The first signs that this wasn't going to be the magical white Christmas everyone had been hoping for. What people didn't realise was that this was just the beginning. The Arctic air mass had settled over Britain like a thick blanket, and it had no intention of moving. Every day brought more snow, more ice, more cold. Temperatures stayed below freezing round the clock. At night, they'd drop even further, hitting -20 in parts of Scotland, -15 in northern England. These were the kind of temperatures you read about happening in Norway or Sweden, not in Britain. By December the 13th, the M62 over the Pennines was closed. Trains were being cancelled across the network. The roads that were still open were treacherous, covered in compacted snow and black ice that no amount of gritting could sort out. Your dad would leave for work at 6:30 in the morning, and you'd watch from the window as his car slid and struggled down the street, brake lights flashing red in the darkness as he tried to maintain control. Some days he'd come back an hour later, having got no further than the end of the road, defeated by conditions that made driving impossible. The real crisis hit in the third week of December. This was meant to be the busiest shopping week of the year, when everyone made their final preparations, when the high streets would be packed with last-minute buyers, when the Christmas spirit was at its peak. Instead, Britain was in the grip of the worst cold spell in decades, and people were starting to worry whether Christmas would happen at all. On December the 15th, a massive blizzard swept across central and northern England. Snow fell so heavily you couldn't see 10 ft in front of you. The wind howled, creating drifts that blocked roads, buried cars, trapped people in their homes. In the Pennines, snowdrifts reached 15 FT in places. Entire villages were cut off, accessible only by helicopter if the weather cleared enough for them to fly. Your mum stood at the kitchen window that morning, staring out at the white wall of snow, and you heard her say something you'd never heard before. "I don't know if we'll get the turkey." Not, "When will we get the turkey?" or "We need to remember the turkey." But if. That's when you knew this was serious. Christmas was 10 days away, and for the first time in your life you understood it might not happen the way it always had. The shops that could open were running low on supplies. Delivery lorries couldn't get through. Fresh produce was particularly scarce because nothing was getting in from the farms. The bread shelves at the supermarket were half empty by midday. Milk was being rationed, 1 pint per customer. Your mum queued for an hour in the freezing cold outside the butcher's, stamping her feet, breath fogging the air just to secure a chicken because all the turkeys were already gone or couldn't be delivered. Please subscribe to the channel to keep these stories alive. The winter of 1981 was one of those moments when ordinary life became extraordinary, when we all had to pull together just to get through. The elderly were suffering terribly. Pensioners who lived alone, who couldn't afford to keep their heating on all day, who were trying to stretch their coal supplies because deliveries weren't getting through. The cold crept into their bones, into their homes. Single glazed windows offered little protection. Some burned furniture to stay warm. Others wore multiple layers of clothing day and night, never taking off their coats, sleeping fully dressed under every blanket they owned. Mrs. Patterson from number 34, an 83-year-old widow, was found by her daughter on December the 17th unconscious in her armchair, the house so cold you could see your breath indoors. Hypothermia. She survived, but only just. Stories like hers were repeated across the country. The hospitals were filling with people suffering from cold-related illnesses, from falls on the ice, from carbon monoxide poisoning, because desperate people were burning anything to stay warm without proper ventilation. Down in London, things weren't much better despite being further south. The Thames partially froze for the first time in years. The underground trains struggled because the points were freezing. Commuters spent hours on platforms waiting for trains that might or might not arrive. Those who did get to work often couldn't get home again. Some slept rough in their offices using coats as blankets, because attempting the journey home in those conditions seemed more dangerous than staying put. The power situation became critical around December the 18th. The demand for electricity was unprecedented. Everyone who had electric heaters had them on full. The national grid was straining. There were rolling blackouts in some areas, deliberately cutting power to different regions to prevent total system collapse. No power meant no heating for those with electric systems. No power meant no way to cook. No power meant sitting in the dark, in the cold, waiting for it to come back on and hoping it would be soon. In rural areas, the situation was even worse. Farms were cut off completely. Farmers were struggling to get food to their livestock, struggling to keep their animals alive. Sheep were dying in the fields, buried under snowdrifts. Cattle couldn't be moved to shelter. The financial losses were catastrophic. But more than that, these were people watching their livelihoods, animals they'd raised and cared for, dying because there was nothing they could do. A farmer in Cumbria, John Hartley, later described digging through 10 FT of snow to try to reach his sheep. He could hear them bleating beneath the drifts, terrified and freezing. By the time he reached them, some were already dead. He pulled out 23 sheep that day. 8 were still alive. He carried them back to the barn one by one through snow up to his waist, knowing that even these might not survive the night. The temperature in his barn was -8. There was no heat, no power. All he could do was wrap them in whatever he could find and hope. The trains became a particular nightmare. On December the 19th, the 7:15 from Sheffield to London got stuck in snowdrifts near Chesterfield. Over 200 passengers trapped on board as the snow piled up around the train and the temperature inside dropped. The heating failed. They sat there for 6 hours waiting for rescue that couldn't get through. People shared what food they had. Businessmen gave their coats to elderly passengers. Mothers held their children close, trying to keep them warm. When they were finally evacuated, they had to walk through waist-deep snow to waiting buses, a journey of half a mile that took over an hour. Children, of course, found moments of joy in it all. The schools were closed from the 14th onwards in most areas, an extended Christmas holiday that should have been brilliant. And for a day or two, it was. You built snowmen, had snowball fights, went sledging on tea trays down the hill behind the estate. Your street became a playground because no cars could get through anyway. But then you noticed things. Your mum's worry, your dad's exhaustion from trying to get to work and back, the way the coal bunker was emptying faster than usual and you weren't sure when the next delivery would come, the way Christmas was getting closer and none of the usual preparations were happening because nobody could get anywhere to do anything. The excitement started to curdle into something else. Anxiety. A child's first real understanding that adults didn't always have everything under control. December the 21st was meant to be the big shopping day, the Monday before Christmas when everyone got their final bits. Instead, the country was frozen solid. The temperature in Birmingham that morning was -18. In Manchester, -16. In Scotland, some places saw -25. These were temperatures Britain simply wasn't equipped to handle. Pipes burst across the country. Water mains froze. Roads that had been passable became skating rinks overnight as everything turned to sheet ice. The government made emergency announcements on the BBC, advice for staying warm, warnings about going out unnecessarily, instructions for checking on elderly neighbours. It had the feeling of a war bulletin, a nation under siege not from an enemy but from the weather itself. By December the 22nd, 3 days before Christmas, the reality was setting in. This wasn't going to be a normal Christmas. The family gatherings that happened every year might not happen because people couldn't travel. The big Christmas dinner might have to be scaled down because you couldn't get the ingredients. The presents might not arrive because the post couldn't get through. Everything that made Christmas Christmas was under threat. But here's the thing about Britain in crisis. Here's what this freeze revealed. People looked after each other. Neighbours who'd barely spoken all year suddenly became crucial lifelines. Young people cleared paths for the elderly. Shops that managed to get supplies shared them fairly. No profiteering, no price gouging. Communities pulled together because that's what you did. Your next-door neighbour, Mr. Davies, came round on the 23rd with a bag of coal. Got a bit extra, he said, though you knew he didn't really. He just knew your bunker was running low and he wasn't going to see you go without. Your mum invited him in for a cup of tea, and he ended up staying for the evening, sharing stories by the fire because his house was cold and empty and this was better. On Christmas Eve, the temperature finally started to rise slightly. Still below freezing, still snowing, but not the brutal, dangerous cold of the previous 2 weeks. People ventured out where they could, last-minute shopping in whatever shops were open, collecting family members who'd been stranded elsewhere, trying to salvage some normalcy from the chaos. Christmas Day 1981 was unlike any other. Families were smaller because not everyone could get there. The food was whatever you'd managed to secure, often not the traditional spread, but cobbled together from what was available. But you were warm, you were together, and you were safe. The telly showed the Queen's speech and she mentioned the difficult winter everyone was enduring. You weren't alone in it. The freeze finally broke in early January. The thaw brought its own problems, flooding as all that snow melted, pipes bursting as ice expanded and contracted, roads crumbling from the damage. But it was over. Britain emerged from one of the worst Decembers on record, battered but unbroken. If you remember that Christmas, share your story in the comments. Tell us how you coped, what you remember, how your family got through it. The Great Freeze of December 1981 taught Britain some hard lessons. Our infrastructure wasn't prepared for sustained extreme cold. Our social support systems struggled under the pressure. But it also showed something important. It showed that when things got truly difficult, people looked after each other. Communities mattered. Neighbours mattered. The ordinary kindness of sharing coal, checking on the elderly, helping a stranger whose car was stuck, that's what got people through. Over the following years, Britain made changes. Better winter preparedness, more robust power infrastructure, improved weather forecasting. But the people who lived through December 1981 never forgot it. The Christmas that almost wasn't. The winter that tested everyone and reminded them that nature still had the power to humble us all. What does winter mean now? central heating that works reliably, gritters out on every road, supermarkets that stay stocked no matter the weather apps that warn you days in advance, four-wheel drive cars and winter tyres. We're better prepared, better equipped, better protected from the kind of crisis that unfolded in 1981. But we've also lost something, the knowledge that we might have to cope without modern conveniences, the understanding that sometimes you have to help your neighbour because the authorities can't get there, the experience of making do, of pulling together, of finding joy in difficult circumstances. December 1981 was brutal, frightening, dangerous even. But it was also a demonstration of resilience, of community, of the British ability to muddle through when everything goes wrong. Were you stuck at home that Christmas? Did you have to cancel plans? Did you help someone in need or receive help yourself? Drop a comment with your memories of the Great Freeze of 1981. The snow eventually melted, the temperatures rose, life returned to normal. But those who lived through it carried the memory forward. The Christmas of 1981, when Britain froze solid, when the dream of a white Christmas became a fight for survival, when ordinary people became heroes simply by looking after each other through the darkest, coldest days. Share it, subscribe, and remember when winter meant more than just switching up the thermostat. Until next time, hold those memories close. They're what connect us to a time when we were all in it together, when a crisis brought out the best in people, when Christmas happened not because everything went perfectly, but because we refused to let the cold defeat us.